There is no guarantee for success, but there are ways to get closer to it when you do the right things. Who you surround yourself with is just as important as what you do. Finding the right people, the right classes, the right activities, and taking the right tests are all decisions that shape your future. Find out more today on Destination University with Dr. Cynthia Colon. Dr. Colon and her guests will give you the tips you need, whether you're a student, parent, or educator. Now, here is your host, Dr. Cynthia Colon.
You're listening to Destination University, a podcast for college-bound teens and the parents, mentors, and educators who support them. If that is you, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Cynthia Colon, TEDx speaker, college admission strategist, and author of the book, Be Committed, Get Admitted. Welcome to Destination University. We help high school families successfully navigate the college admission process by helping students create an action plan, become interesting applicants, and write compelling essays that increase acceptance letters. As a former admission officer at Vassar College and an elite private school counselor in Los Angeles, I have coached, mentored, guided, and worked directly with over 10,000 students. I know what it takes to get admitted to top 100 colleges. As my gift to you, I'm revealing the exact admission committee process we used at Vassar. It's all in my new guide, 4 questions admission officers ask when deciding who to admit or reject. You can get that at drcynthiacolon.com/admit. In the guide, I share the 4 questions I used in the 12 minutes I had to review an entire application. I give you the order I read the application, what I was looking for, what I highlighted and took note of. If you've ever wondered what admission officers are looking for and how decisions are made, well, today is your lucky day. Again, go to drcynthiacolon.com/admit. Okay, let's get to today's episode. Thank you for wanting to just, say, kind of walk through. It's also good to just kind of go journey back and see, I can't believe it's been years.
Yeah.
And it's finally happened.
Definitely.
So anyway, I as I said, I wanted to just kind of, capture what you wanted to share, but also sort of, and I'm curious too, what was the first thing or what was it that made you say, we got to reach out to somebody and how to get that ball rolling,
Yeah. Well, I would say the main impetus for me was that, I'm the type of person who I'm crazily organized and super anal about stuff. I like to do everything a month or 2 weeks before it's due. And Mira has the exact opposite personality, right? And I already felt like we were rubbing a lot on getting schoolwork done and how much she studied and all this stuff. And I really felt like, it would be so nice to have somebody who told her. And I found in the past that she, if it's kind of a third party involved, that she, responds better to that. With me helping her to do school and stuff, that never really panned out or worked, frankly, at all. And, getting a tutor was a much better way to go. And so I kind of came into it with really that was my main motivation. I kind of felt I felt like I knew a lot about college admissions, just having read a lot. And then I always joke that having applied to college and med school and residency and kind of doing that at very highly selective institutions, I had a good feeling of what needed to be done. And so I wasn't so scared about that part, which I think is a lot of people's motivation.
Yeah.
I guess that was kind of how it started. Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of thinking through, because what I heard you say was you wanted to just also have a relationship with your daughter. You didn't want to be that person who was always the nag.
The only thing we're talking about is nagging. Exactly.
Yeah. And you're doing this. Are you doing that? Are you doing this?
Yeah.
And it's funny, interesting, because I usually have moms of of sons who will say that a lot.
Well, I always say that my kids are the opposite of the stereotypes. I have the like more free-spirited older daughter, and I've actually have the more like type A anal younger son. So I have the complete opposite of what people, of my own stereotypes too. So
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
And
But
I do want to say, I mean, you might get to this, but
yeah.
One of the things that I really most appreciated about you, and that what made, us go with you, which has been, an amazing decision, was that I did feel like I had that base of knowledge. And I think in the other people I spoke to, like, I don't feel like they appreciated that. I think I felt like I got kind of like the canned, like, you don't know anything about college admissions, you don't know what it's like right now kind of approach. And I think I've told you this before. And I really appreciated that. I felt like you kind of came at me at where I felt like my level was at, and to be like, okay, yeah, like we're here and we're going to build on this. And it's not the sort of like, you don't know what it's like, and I will say, like, now I'm on the back end of it. That has borne out to be true. Like, I don't 2 years later come out saying like, oh my gosh, like I had no idea, what to do. I think like the things that make people pick somebody, whether it was 20 years ago or now, are the same, even though maybe the general landscape is different. Anyway,
Right.
I really wanted to say that.
No, well, I think that's so you didn't have a fear of the process.
Right,
That
exactly.
was not where you're,
Right.
where you were.
And I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I have no idea how any of this works, which I think that's where some people come from.
But so it sounds like you were aware of the problem, you were aware of the situation, you were aware of the competitive nature of all of that, and you just needed help with like, okay, I don't want to be the only one, telling my daughter that like this is important,
Yeah,
and
and I wanted to execute from here, like not from like the ground up, which you totally did, Yeah. Yeah.
well, and I think that, I mean, I don't, you can sort of speak to your school, but something that I hear, and so you can tell me if this was true of your school. Sometimes I hear parents just like you. I mean, I think that we tend to attract parents like you that have savvy and have some knowledge. So, and both spectrums, like the savvy, knowledgeable, and then the ones that are like, I didn't go to college, or I was first and I was like, now I need help.
Yeah.
But what I hear sometimes is that when you're someone like you, who you have some sophistication, the school is more general. Like the school is giving advice to like the general population of like, okay, we're all, going to be going and applying to these schools, and you're like, no, but I know I need more than that. Was that sort of true for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our high school didn't provide any support, like zero. So, we went to a huge public high school. I didn't actually expect that they would help at all, and they didn't. I mean, frankly, her counselor was really, I appreciate her counselor was organized and on top of stuff. So she knew what needed to be done. She understood Naviance. She got everything in on time. So that part was great. But in terms of any actual advising, there was zero. And if anything, the problem with Mira's high school was actually they really tried to emphasize the opposite. She is at a really highly competitive high school where, the administration really perceives that the parents and kids put too much emphasis on academics and too much emphasis on going to a highly selective college. So their messaging is actually the opposite all the time. And I mean, this is a whole separate conversation, but I will say that I think that's completely pointless, because one, the parents aren't going to listen to you. So now you're kind of just talking to, like, it's deaf ears. And at the same time, you're not providing the support that those parents need. I mean, they're trying to message like, don't worry about what college you go to, and everyone's going to be fine, but nobody's listening to it. Nobody's listening to it. No matter how hard they try to be shoving it down, this is not the population that is going to accept that message.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, yeah, beyond just like making sure everything was entered in Naviance, the school provided nothing. Yeah.
Okay. So you knew you needed some extra help.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, one of the things I always just am always curious about, because right, we're about to, well, we've recruited, many of the next class, but sort of the bulk of like college essay boot campers and dream college colleges, all of those students are now kind of coming in, right? It's about the time that people come into the funnel, so to speak. But it's a leap of faith, I guess, because nobody can get, like, no company can guarantee you're going to be admitted X, Y, or Z place. Mm-hmm. So as a parent, how do you wrap your brain around, you can't know the outcome, but what is it that you know that you need, even though you can't be
Yeah,
guaranteed.
yeah. Right. So I think where I felt like I had a good knowledge base was what list of activities or what kind of activities and what kind of amalgamation of things is going to look good to an admissions counselor. So that
Mm.
part I felt like I had a handle on. I think where I think you guys helped the most and the biggest leap of faith was in the essays. So I think that was huge. And then also not in the list of activities, but how to order them, how to word it. And I think that part was immensely helpful. And I think that made a huge difference because at least for me personally, that's definitely a weakness. Like, I think if I had been the one to help her, and maybe I'm not giving her enough credit. I don't know what essay she would have written without your help, but I would have just kind of been very dry and factual. Like, I'm not somebody who's creative or makes things sound interesting at all. And so I think, and because she started in July with you with that, like that was like the one thing I did not touch. Like, I did not look at her essays at all until November. Whereas, like, I'm like all over her with everything else. And so that was like the one thing that I didn't touch, like ever read, nothing until, it came time to submit. And I made sure, I looked at it then. And that was a huge, huge relief. And then when I read the essays, I was like, I love these. These are great. Like, they're so much more interesting and creative than I thought they ever would have been. And so, yeah.
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 Oh, that's interesting. That's great because we're just about to launch a 3-day event coming up soon. And we've had to do some deep diving of like, what is it that makes us special? And it is, for me, I think it's what we call the coolness factor. You've heard me use that term, and how to package all of that
Yeah.
Ultimately all of those things come together in essays, but also just the wholeness of the application, the compelling application. And how do you describe those things?
Yeah.
Um, so, you watch your daughter go through this process. And one of the things that I can remember specific to Mira was, I would always say to her, like, you're a tap dancer. Like, how many tap dancers are there? Like, remind her how cool she was, right? Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
how far up the leadership chain, the hierarchy, as I call it, the leadership hierarchy. So what did you see on your side that, as students go through this process, so your own daughter, you're watching your daughter, when were those moments of like imposter syndrome, or like, oh my gosh, can I do this? And what would you see on your end, and how did you navigate through that?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't, I can't, I don't know that there were moments of imposter syndrome. It was kind of more of a like, hey, I think Mira and I both thought like, hey, you have a pretty cool application. You've done some really neat, interesting stuff and a couple of different things, like she had one really big, I guess spike or coolness factor, but then she had a couple pretty good things supporting it. And I guess the fear was more like, is this really going to compensate for the GPA? Like when they keep saying it's going to be holistic, I mean, really, is it really going to be holistic? And I think maybe that was the fear and the gap, and, so I've been telling people, I'm like, hey, like, it's true, like there were places Mira got in that for sure we didn't think she would get in. And for sure her GPA was like way lower than the average. And so somebody liked her application and like what she put in it. So all of this effort and work was worth it. And I think also it was also kind of a good feeling to think like, yeah, like getting straight A's isn't going to do it. I mean, and you and I have said that from the beginning, but I guess it was good to see that that was somewhat actually true. I mean, and looking at her friends' college results, I mean, it's been a mix, but definitely seeing the kids get really straight A's, but didn't have like really anything else interesting in their application, definitely did not get into,
Mm.
their dream schools, or even some of the schools I would have thought they would have gotten into anyway. And who knows what they said in their essays. And, you can only make so many assumptions based on a group of like 30 or 40 kids. But anyways, but that was, so,
Yeah.
that was really great to see kind of that all like bear out. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, share it with with the world, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the outcome? Like, what, going in, and where's she headed, and all of those things.
Oh yeah, so she is headed to Berkeley, which today was actually their school decision day. Actually, she just walked in the door. Say hi. She's wearing her shirt. Oh, you can't see it.
Okay, she's
Closer so you're not
such
blurred.
a pride. Oh my God, you're officially a bear. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. So so that's where she's headed, which was a total 180 from, what we originally planned, because she was thinking East Coast and a school in the city. I mean, I guess Berkeley is more an urban environment, so that part is good. But and she got into a bunch of places in Boston and New York, and but in the end, just with the quality of the education and also cost, of course, being a factor, it just made sense to go to Berkeley.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. So many families that are California, I'm like, you cannot ignore, like you see like the price point that you get for the quality of education. And so I'm sure you're glad that she applied to Berkeley.
Yeah. And definitely we settled on that. I mean, honestly, in the beginning, we decided not to send her to private high school, and we've always, all along, we're like, we will pay for private college, and that was always the plan. But now that it came down to it, I'm like, wow, like that's really a lot of money, and why were we going to pay that? Like, so I mean, you can say that when you have choices, right? So, yeah, but yeah.
Well, and that's the ultimate goal, is that this process, from my perspective, and you tell me what you think, for me, it's always about choices. Like, how can we maximize your choices in the end? Because at the end of the day, it should be your choice, the student's choice, the family's choice, where to go. Other than, oh, I only got into one or two schools, and I don't really have a choice. So that's always our goal on our end. And I liken it to, when you're buying a home, you have a budget and you can afford, whatever it is, a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom. So we try to say, like, whatever your budget is, we're going to try to get you admitted to, like, even one
Yeah.
that
Well,
has
and
an
I
extra
really wanted
bathroom.
to, yeah, I'm glad you brought that, because I really wanted to also tell you that, so you definitely did that, but I think you did it in such a better way. Like, I think you set realistic expectations, but you didn't use fear as a motivator. And I think that was really critical, because I've talked to my friends, in like a few of my friends, really in depth with what they've heard and what they talked about with their college counselor. And they would always say to me, oh, well, our college counselor said there's no way our kid would get into that school. It's totally a reach, and they're not going to get it anywhere. And they got to apply to these like 15 safeties, like all schools that have like close to 100% acceptance rates. And I'm like, I'm close enough friends with these people that I felt like I know their kids' real stats. And I'm like, that's just not true. Like, if you look at the numbers, that's not true. You need to apply to one school that has like a very high acceptance rate. And these other schools that your counselor's telling you there's no way your kid's going to get into any of them, there's no way they wouldn't get into at least one of them, And so I just didn't like that. Like, I heard it over and over again with different friends, different counselors, just a very like fear approach to the whole thing, which, I don't know, left a bad taste in my mouth. And I don't think you ever did that, which was great. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think our spiel is that, the top 100 colleges, like, we can certainly find one of those, like, that will
Right.
admit,
Yeah.
like, I guess that's the very specific result that any parent would want, is that, my kid gets into a top 100 or top 50 school. And look, she did.
Yeah.
Like, she's not just one, she got into multiple.
Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, so good, so good. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time to share, because it's helpful. One, it's helpful to hear on the other end. So many times it's hard to chase everybody down, because you're on to the next thing. Getting into college is just the starting line to the next thing you got to do.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I appreciate it. So anyway, did you have any other thoughts or advice that you would give to someone who is coming into this, maybe as a freshman or as a sophomore family?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the number one thing I tell people is, like, there is no cookie cutter approach. I think that's the other thing that bothers me from the advice I hear from people. And then yeah, too much emphasis on it has to be all these STEM classes and it has to be the hardest classes. If your kid can't, if that's not appropriate for your kid, then you're going to start driving them down the wrong way, you know? And what I always tell people is your kid has, I mean, you know, you have to do well in school, but your kid has to have something that they really feel is important to them and they want to do and that they can hopefully excel in, and that they need to promote that. And it doesn't matter what it is. And I know a lot of people are saying this, but I still feel like that message is missing. But like, it doesn't, like, if they're like expert at origami or whatever, then they have to take that and go with it, because you can't make your kid do something that they're not good at or don't want to do and make it their like coolest factor, right? It has to be something that they want, and it doesn't matter what it is. I think people still feel like, oh, if my kid's pre-med, it has to be this thing. And I mean, the application has to be united in a way, but like, I just tell people, like, you got to help find your kid, find that thing and like foster it, and you know, and then channel it in other directions, which is, I think, what, you know, Mira did, you know, really successfully. So yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. Like, I'm like, preach it. I'm like, preach it.
Yeah.
Yes. I love what you just said about just, letting them do whatever it is, origami, paddleboarding,
Right, exactly.
whatever it is that you like, just go with that. So such good
Yeah,
advice.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for sure. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Monica. And
Yeah, of course.
Mira is going to be, oh my gosh. And we're all going to, what is Berkeley's new athletic
Oh, they're in the ACC now.
ACC? Okay, so we're
Yeah,
USC is going to Big Ten. So yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh no, I
I
know.
know, I know. All
It's
the
a,
games and stuff is going to be weird. Yeah.
it's an
I know.
end of
You know, she decided not to try out for the dance team, which I think is smart freshman year because it's such a huge time commitment. And I want her to be able to explore other stuff like, you know, sororities and some of the other dance clubs. But it would have been crazy because, like, now the dance team, at least the portion that gets to travel, they're going to be flying like across the country, right? Instead of, you know, it'll be interesting how that ends up working out with the budget for just the dance team. But traditionally, they travel for the football and basketball games. So anyway.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You're making me, I'm going to stop recording. You're remind me, I've got someone I want to introduce her that's on the dance team. Here's the truth. For nearly 30 years, I have worked at elite private colleges and/or private high schools. I know what well-resourced families do to ensure college success, and I can tell you, if your child is enrolled at a public or religious high school, chances are she or he is already 5 steps behind. However, today is your lucky day. To get you ahead of your private school peers, I have a gift for you. I'm revealing the exact admission committee process we used at Vassar. It's all in my new guide. 4 questions admission officers ask when deciding who to admit or reject. You can go to drcynthiacolon.com/admit to get your copy. I share the 4 questions I used in the 12 minutes I had to review the entire application. If you've ever wondered what admission officers are looking for and how decisions are actually made, you're not alone. Take action now to get 5 steps ahead and begin increasing those acceptance letters. Again, that's Dr. Cynthia Colon, drcynthiacolon.com/admit. That is all I have for you today, my friends. Thank you for tuning in to Destination University. I'm Dr. Cynthia Kwan. If this episode has in any way helped, fueled, or inspired you, please share this episode with 3 people in the next 30 minutes. You can subscribe to Destination University wherever you get your podcast. And while you're there, leave us a review. It sure does help a lot. By subscribing and reviewing, you help to grow the community of informed families across the nation. And if you haven't binge listened to our previous seasons, do it. With each episode, you'll learn a new tip, trick, or strategy for success. Start with episode 1, the one word every parent should remove. You'll learn my mom's secret to ensuring college success for her daughters. And once again, if you found value today, please share this episode with 3 families in the next 30 minutes. I'll be sure to see you next week, same time, same place. Until then, wherever you are, may you have a happy and sunny day. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for listening this week to Destination University. Be sure to join Dr. Cynthia Colon again and get one step closer to your success.